The Galactic Dominion's flagship, Eclipse of Tyrants, hovered ominously over Earth, a war machine so vast that its silhouette alone cast a creeping shadow across entire continents. Within its cold, metallic halls, Supreme Overlord stood before the command throne, his piercing reptilian gaze locked onto the massive holographic display before him. The Dominion's War Council, composed of warlords and strategists from across the empire, stood in silent anticipation. Before them, flickering to life through the transmission feed, was the representative of humanity, Ambassador Carter, a man with graying hair and a casual air about him. And like the trembling legions they had encountered in past conquests, Carter did not look afraid. He leaned back in his chair, raising an eyebrow as if he were listening to the setup of an unoriginal joke. Draped in regal war armor adorned with battle scars, stepped forward, his deep, guttural voice filling the chamber. Humans of Earth, hear me and heed my words. You stand before the might of the Galactic Dominion, an empire that has conquered and annihilated entire civilizations for lesser offenses than your defiance. Your species is weak. Your armies are insignificant. Your technology is primitive. Surrender your planet immediately, and we may allow you to serve in our labor colonies. Resist, and we shall burn your world to cinders. He let the threat hang in the air, expecting the usual responses: please, negotiations, or outright panic. Instead, Carter just blinked. There was a long, awkward pause before he smirked. I'm sorry, did you say something? We were too busy laughing. The chamber fell into dead silence. Eyes narrowed dangerously. Across the War Council, Dominion warlords exchanged confused glances. Some their translators, certain they had misheard the human. Claws tightened against the armrest of his throne. You mock us, he hissed. Carter leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. Oh no, we're taking this very seriously. You're an intergalactic empire, right? You've got so many ships. Oh, scary. He wiggled his fingers sarcastically. Let me guess, you want us to say oh no, mighty overlord, we surrender. Is that it? He let out a chuckle. Buddy, I don't know how to break this to you, but we've been making fun of guys like you for centuries. One of the warlords, an Elden general with cybernetic enhancements, growled lowly. This is insolence. Execute their legions first. Make an example of them. However, was no fool. He was seasoned enough to recognize something was wrong. No species had ever reacted like this before. Every species they had conquered, from the mighty to the cunning, had eventually succumbed to fear. Even the most warriors had trembled when faced with the overwhelming might of the Dominion. But these humans? They were laughing. He motioned for silence among his warlords and studied Carter carefully. You think this is a game? He said slowly, his voice now laced with irritation. You should be begging for your lives. Instead, you behave like fools. Carter shrugged. Well, when an alien overlord gives you a speech that sounds like it came straight out of a bad movie, it's kinda hard to take it seriously. He gestured. Hang on, let me check something. He turned away for a moment, muttering, Hey Jim, what's the count at? A distant voice responded. We're at 7,200 N. Carter turned back, grinning. Would you believe it? That's the exact number of people on the internet who guessed exactly what you were going to say before you even said it. Seriously, man, you've got to work on your material. The warlords were utterly baffled. Felt his patience thinning. His claws clicked against the metal of his throne as he straightened. You think yourselves untouchable, he snarled. You will learn your place soon enough. Carter just smiled. Sure, big guy. Listen, I'd love to stay and chat, but we've got important things to do. You know, like figuring out how to meme this properly. He turned toward someone. Hey, did we Photoshop him with a clown wig yet? Pupils shrank to slits. A what? A Dominion officer monitoring human transmissions suddenly stiffened. Supreme Overlord, human communication networks are rapidly producing imagery of the you. He hesitated. They are altering your likeness. Marking you. A new transmission popped up on the holographic display. It was an image of, but instead of his imposing warlord appearance, he was crudely edited to wear a rainbow clown wig and a bright red nose. The caption beneath it read, "Galactic Tyrant? More like Galactic." Silence. One of the younger warlords audibly gasped. They are mocking our supreme overlord. Another warlord was quivering in disbelief, muttered, This has never happened before. Face contorted with fury. His talons gripped the throne's armrest so hard that the meta groaned under the pressure. "This is an insult beyond measure," he roared, slamming a fist against the throne's armrest. Carter simply gave a cool study, "Bro. Anyway, we'll get back to you when we've finished laughing." Click. The silence in the Dominion war chamber was thick, an oppressive force pressing down on the assembled warlords and generals. Supreme Overlord sat motionless on his throne, his clawed fingers gripping the armrests so tightly that the reinforced meta groaned under the pressure. His golden eyes burned with fury, locked onto the frozen transmission screen where the last image of the human ambassador still lingered, grinning, mocking. Around him, his war council shifted uneasily, many glancing at each other, uncertain how to proceed. Never in the Dominion's history had a species reacted this way. Never had an ultimatum been met with such blatant disregard, such brazen insult. High General, a veteran of 100 planetary campaigns, finally broke the silence. His voice was rough, tinged with disbelief. They made a mockery of you, Supreme Overlord. Of all of us. His mechanical eye whirred as it zoomed in on the grotesque caricature of, still displayed on the holographic console. No species has ever dared to humiliate the Dominion in such a way. Lips curled in a snarl. Because no species has been so foolish before, he hissed. Their defiance is meaningless. We will make an example of them. Dispatch the fleet. I want their major cities reduced to ash within the day. Warlord, a hulking reptilian strategist, cleared his throat cautiously. Overlord, the humans are taunting us, yes, but we must consider the implications of their response. They do not act like a species on the verge of destruction. They are not negotiating for their survival, nor are they scrambling for a desperate counterattack. Instead, they laugh. He frowned, his ridged brow furrowing deeply. That is unnatural. Tail lashed against the floor with a sharp crack. It is arrogance. Warlord, a cyborg strategist with an emotionless, synthesized voice, tilted his head. Or it is confidence. A murmur spread through the war council. Confidence? Against them? The idea was absurd. The Dominion's fleet had crushed empires, wiped out entire warrior races who had fought desperately until their last breath. Yet, Earth's representative had not even tried to bargain. Slammed a fist against the armrest, standing to his full height. Enough of this cowardly speculation. They are primitive. Their weapons are no match for our fleet. Their armies are disorganized. Their defenses are obsolete. They are insects who do not understand the scale of the power they have provoked. His eyes narrowed. We will educate them. General stiffened. Shall I order an immediate aorbiter bombardment? Considered for a moment before shaking his head. No, that would be too swift, too merciful. We will invade in force, conquer their planet piece by piece, march into their cities, tear down their symbols of defiance. Let them see their powerlessness. Let them feel the weight of their mistake before the final blow is struck. There was a murmur of approval from some of the warlords, though others exchanged wary glances. Despite the overlord's decisiveness, something still felt wrong. Ever the strategist spoke again. Overlord, if I may, before we deploy our full invasion force, allow me to conduct a tactical probe. A small detachment of elite units to land and gauge their capabilities. If they truly are as weak as you say, then the invasion will proceed unimpeded. But if there is something we are overlooking, his mechanical eyes glowed faintly as he processed probabilities. It would be wise to know before we commit our full strength. Exhaled sharply, considering. Finally, he nodded. Very well. You will have your probe force. But do not waste time. The invasion begins at dawn. Bowed his head slightly. It shall be done. On Earth, in a hidden military command center, Ambassador Carter leaned back in his chair, watching the Dominion's transmission cut off. A slow grin spread across his face as he turned to the gathered military and intelligence officials surrounding him. Well, that worked. General Harris, a woman with a perpetually unimpressed expression, crossed her arms. You really think pissing them off was the best move? Carter shrugged. You saw them. They're used to fear, not ridicule. They don't know how to process it. And when people don't know how to process something, they make mistakes. A younger intelligence officer tapped on his tablet, scrolling through intercepted Dominion chatter. They're sending in a reconnaissance force. Small elite units. Seems like they're trying to gauge if we're bluffing. Harris smirked. Oh, they're in for a hell of a call. Carter chuckled. That's the plan. The Dominion thinks strength comes from big fleets and scary speeches. They have no idea what they're walking into. Another officer chimed in. Public response has been enthusiastic. He turned his screen, showing a live stream of memes flooding the internet. One of them depicted the Dominion warlord with a cartoonish, crying expression. The caption read, Bro really thought we'd beg LMAO. Another showed a crude drawing of the Dominion fleet hovering over Earth, with a human stick figure pointing at it, saying, oh no, anyway. Harris snorted. Jesus. We really are impossible to conquer, aren't we? The Dominion dropship cut through Earth's atmosphere like a dagger, its sleek hull reflecting the glow of the city lights below. Inside, Commandant stood at the front of his squad, eyes locked on the tactical display. His soldiers, hand-picked elites of the Dominion's war machine, were silent, their discipline absolute. They had invaded countless worlds before, crushed entire civilizations beneath their boots, and this mission would be no different. Earth was a minor obstacle, a primitive world standing in the way of the Dominion's expansion. Or so they had been told. The dropship touched down in the middle of a dimly lit industrial sector, its landing precise and calculated. The rear hatch hissed open, releasing a burst of steam as led his squad into the night. Their armor hummed softly with integrated energy shielding, their weapons primed for any resistance. But the streets were empty. No soldiers. No barricades. Not even a single civilian running in fear. It was unsettling. The humans had received the Dominion's ultimatum. Where were their defendants? Motioned for his troops to spread out, scanning the area with their advanced visors. A faint rustling echoed from an alleyway, and one of the soldiers turned, weapon raised. A small object rolled toward them, stopping just at their feet. The squad tensed, expecting an explosive device, but instead, it was a can of spray paint. Eyes flicked upward, following the trail of bright neon paint splattered across the alley wall. His mandibles clenched at the sight, a crude cartoon of a Dominion warrior, exaggerated features twisted in a ridiculous grimace, with bold human writing beneath it. Go home, losers. A wave of laughter erupted from unseen speakers, bouncing through the empty streets. The sound was grating, and unmistakably human. Jaw tightened. Enough games, he growled. Thermal scans. Now. One of his soldiers adjusted their visor, sweeping the buildings for heat signatures. Their systems lit up instantly. Dozens, no, hundreds of readings, moving impossibly fast, surrounding them on all sides. But before could process the data, the first attack came. A blinding flash filled the street, and the world exploded into chaos. Loud, deafening music blasted from hidden speakers, an earth song, obnoxiously upbeat and rhythmic. The sudden sensory overload disrupted the squad's helmet interfaces, causing visual distortions and system lag. Before they could recover, figures emerged from the shadows, human operatives clad in dark, flexible armor, their faces obscured by visors shaped into grinning skulls. barely had time to bark an Eordan before the first blow landed. One of his soldiers swung his plasma rifle around, but the human was faster, dodging effortlessly before delivering a brutal strike to the soldier's armored throat. The Dominion warrior stumbled, gasping for breath as his own enhanced reflexes failed to keep up. Another soldier tried to fire, only for his rifle to be yanked from his hands by a simple, cold wire. In the blink of an eye, a human operative had disarmed him, twisted the weapon around, and knocked him unconscious with the butt of his own rifle. Pivoted, raising his blaster, but his target was gone. No, not gone. Above, a shadow flickered overhead, and before he could react, a pair of boots slammed into his chest, sending him skidding backward. He barely kept his footing, glaring up at the figure who had struck him. The human was unarmored. No cybernetic enhancements, no energy shields, just raw, terrifying speed and precision. Their stance was relaxed, yet calculated, a predator toying with its prey. Lunged, swinging his plasma blade in a tight arc. The human swayed backward just enough to avoid the strike, then countered with a swift kick to knee joint. Peen shot through him as he buckled slightly, just enough for the human to step in and lock his arm behind him in an effortless maneuver. "You guys really thought you were scary, huh?" The human's voice was amused, almost mocking. "All that tech, all that muscle, and you still can't keep up." Ray roared, breaking free with a burst of strength, but it was already too late. His squad was on the ground, either unconscious or groaning in pain. The music still blared, and more human operatives emerged from the darkness, casually walking toward them, unimpressed. One of them held up a Dominion blaster and whistled. "This is cute," they said, tossing the weapon aside. "Shame it didn't help you." Mind reeled. This wasn't just resistance. This was humiliation. The humans had let them land. Let them spread out. Let them think they were in control, only to rip it away in an instant. His kind had always believed cybernetic enhancements and advanced weaponry made them superior. But these humans, these unmodified, unarmored humans, had dismantled his entire squad without breaking a sweat. A soft chime echoed through the air. One of the human operatives tapped their wrist device. "All right, wrap it up. Boss says they've had enough for tonight." The squad backed away, leaving, and his defeated warriors sprawled across the street. The music cut out abruptly, and the eerie silence returned. Then, from a nearby rooftop, a single drone projected a massive neon message into the night sky. The Dominion War Council chamber was deathly silent. High Commandant stood at the head of the massive obsidian table, his claws drumming against the surface as he glared at the floating above them. The images were humiliating. Dominion warriors, the pride of their empire, defeated without a single human casualty. Their advanced weapons, their cybernetic enhancements, their meticulous strategies, all rendered useless against a species that had refused to take the invasion seriously. Mandibles twitched in barely restrained rage as he replayed the final moment of the failed incursion. The massive neon projection over Earth's cityscope flickered across the screen. "Get good, scrubs." The other warlords in the chamber shifted uneasily. Some were visibly furious, their pride wounded beyond measure. Others sat stiffly, their expressions unreadable, but their silence spoke volumes. The Dominion had never encountered such a response from a species they sought to conquer. They had expected resistance, defiance, maybe even desperation, but not mockery. Not a complete and utter dismantling of their forces, not a battlefield where humans turned war into a joke at their expense. Warlord, one of the Elden strategists, finally spoke. His voice was low, measured, but carried a weight of disbelief. They made a game of it." He gestured toward the Dominion warriors sprawled unconscious in the streets, their weapons stolen, their armor barely scratched. "They played with us. We were not defeated in battle, we were thawed with." His words settled over the council like a heavy fog, and murmurs of frustration and unease rippled through the chamber. Talons dug into the table, his patience wearing thin. "Enough," he growled. We will not be made fools of. The humans believe themselves untouchable, but they have only delayed the inevitable. We will return with greater force, and we will. The doors to the chamber hissed open, carting him off. A Dominion intelligence officer strode in, his posture tense. Without waiting for permission, he stepped forward and activated a new holographic projection. The warlords turned their attention to the display, expecting another debriefing of their failure. Instead, what they saw made their blood run cold. It was not footage of the beta. It was a live transmission. A human stood at the center of the projection, seated casually in what appeared to be a dimly lit control room. His feet were propped up on the console, arms behind his head, completely at ease. His grin was infuriatingly smug, and when he finally spoke, it was as if he were addressing a group of unruly children. "So, how's the whole invading Earth thing going for you guys?" he asked, tilting his head. The War Council chamber erupted in furious growls and hisses, but the human continued unfazed. "I gotta say, we were really hoping for a challenge. You guys took a big game with your whole unstoppable empire thing, but," he gestured vaguely, "it's not looking great." He pressed a button on his console, and new images filled the Dominion soldiers being effortlessly taken down, their weapons being disassembled and into makeshift sculptures by laughing humans. Dominion dropships repainted with crude symbols and graffiti. One particularly shameful image showed a Dominion war banner, now defaced with bright pink paint and an embarrassingly cartoonish smiley face. The warlords seethed, but the human only chuckled. "Look, I'll cut to the chase," he said, finally sitting forward. "You guys suck at this. Like, really, really bad. If this was a PvP match, we'd be reporting you for griefing. You might wanna rethink your whole galactic conquest thing, 'cause right now, you're about as scary as a wet paper bag." His smile faded just slightly, and his voice took on a tone that, for the first time, carried a hint of something serious. "We let you leave," he said, eyes sharp. "We could have ended it right there. But we let you leave. If you come back, if you actually try this nonsense again." He leaned forward, staring directly into the transmission feed. "We won't be nice next time." The message cut off. The chamber was silent. The warlords sat frozen, the weight of those final words hanging in the air like a death sentence. They had come to Earth expecting submission. Instead, they had found something far worse. Not defiance, not resistance, but amusement. The humans had laughed at them, dismantled them without effort, and now they had warned them. A species that did not even see them as a threat had granted them mercy. High Commandant clenched his fists. "Prepare the fleet," he growled. "We will not be mocked. We will." Stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "No." The chamber turned to him, started. "We will not return," the Elden warlord declared. "You saw what they did to our best soldiers, our most advanced weapons. And that was when they were playing with us." His voice dropped lower, almost a whisper. The chamber remained frozen, every warlord processing what had just been admitted. The Dominion, feared across the stars, the conquerors of countless civilizations, had finally encountered a species they could not subjugate. Not because the humans were stronger, not because they were more advanced, but because they did not fear the Dominion. And a species that did not fear them was something far more dangerous than any armada. It was something the Dominion had never faced before.